You come to us from another world, from beyond the stars and the void of space. Transcendent, pure, of unimaginable beauty. Bringing with you the essence of love, you transform all who are touched by you. Mundane concerns, troubles, and sorrows dissolve in your presence, bringing joy to ruler and ruled, to peasant and king. You bewilder us with your grace. All evils transform into goodness. You are the master alchemist. You light the fire of love in earth and sky, in heart and soul of every being. Through your love, existence and non-existence merge, all opposites unite, all that is profane becomes sacred again. With these words from Rumi, good morning and welcome to Live Oak. I'm Kendra Wise. I'm a member of the worship ministry, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. This morning, it is my pleasure to introduce Jon Phenicie as today's speaker. Jon, thank you for the time, attention, and care you have put into today's service. We are looking forward to it.
Let's worship together. These are the words from The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes from an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I invite you to enter a place of contemplation and thought. Feel your body in the chair, your feet on the ground. I'll read some words by Sam Trembor for our meditation, followed by a moment of silence. Teach my heart healing words. Show me the words that help rather than harm. Instruct me in the verbs that bring energy, the nouns pointing to the real, the adjectives describing subtleties. Reveal to me how words can be offered in a way that connects rather than separates, that develops trust and eschews suspicion, that opens the heart and relaxes the mind. Amen. Well, I wish you a good morning again, and it's very nice to be in a place with lots of friends and a lot of very special and contemplative people. Before I get started, I want to make something absolutely and totally clear to everyone in the congregation. I am not a psychologist, and I have never played one on TV. This morning, I want to talk about transformation. As I was preparing for this talk, I started thinking about what beliefs are held in common across most of the world's religions. It seemed like speaking to the things that we all agree on would potentially be a healing thing in a world where most of us feel like there is so much hurt and divisiveness. And I can't help but think about what happened yesterday when I say those words. The golden rule seemed like a great place to start, so I dug in. One question I asked led to another, until I ended up in a very different place and frame of mind than what I expected. But before we talk about that journey, I want to start with cats and dogs. In general, people and families fall into categories based on their relationships with cats and dogs. There are those of you here that are probably firmly cat people, and think of yourselves in those terms. Undoubtedly, there are some who probably align themselves with dogs, and maybe there are even some of you who are completely open-minded on the subject and would put yourselves into both camps. And I would guess that even if you don't think of yourself that way, and even if you've never had a cat or a dog, you can still conjure up some archetypal cat or dog behavior. So, this morning, I want you to all sit back and ask you to put your imagination caps on and think about a beautiful but excitable golden retriever. Flowing mane, earnest eyes, that has just heard the master's car door slam in the driveway. This dog is the ultimate practitioner of the golden rule. What is the dog wanting? The dog wants belly rubs, ear scratching, hugs, and maybe for the true dog lovers out there, kisses. You know who you are. So what does the retriever do? The moment the door opens, it effusively jumps up and down, wags its tail, maybe even knocking something over in enthusiasm, offering the master exactly what it is yearning for. Now, let's turn to the cat. There are some cats who actually feign disdain for humans, except for maybe the one person in the household who is truly indifferent to them. But what might happen if you greet the cat the same way you would greet a dog? Claw marks and stitches. The cat and the dog each want and need different things. And in our story, the dog is acting on assumptions. People are just taller, moderately less hairy dogs. And do you know what my dog and my cell phone have in common? They both have caller ID. Now, I believe I believe that we can use cats and dogs to reflect on human behavior. Could it be that we humans sometimes are like the well-meaning golden retriever, trying to hug the hats in our lives just a little too hard? Do we enter situations with the most virtuous and noble intentions, backed by natural assumptions, and are surprised when our efforts are met with claws? Today, I would like to talk about upgrading those assumptions. And to get there, we'll visit the ancient alchemists, pause for a chat with Carl Jung, revisit some world religions, and end up with what I think might be an upgrade to the golden rule. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, why alchemy? It could have been the result of my nerdy interest in history and epic fantasy fiction, combined with my education as a chemical engineer, and just thinking about the golden rule. But in fact, my questioning led me to think a lot about transformation. As an engineer and scientist, I was taught to think rationally, use the scientific method, and make decisions based on data and statistics. And often, when I have thought about the alchemists, I picture the wizard-like man hunched over some glass apparatus or blazing smoky fire under a crucible filled with something molten, desperately and without hope trying to convert lead into gold. the gold that will hire an army of mercenaries to save the kingdom. Now, there are some who think about alchemists as magicians, influenced by recent popular literature and movies and plays going back to the early 17th century. Ben Jonson, a contemporary of Shakespeare, wrote The Alchemist, considered a masterpiece of Renaissance drama. The story was all about con artists playing on the gullibility of people believing in get-rich schemes, changing lead into gold. But looking deeper, what I found most interesting about alchemy was that the ancients weren't just about understanding chemistry and converting lead into gold. And while they did run very detailed experiments and developed many chemical processes still in use today, things like calcination, amalgamation, distillation, and sublimation, they were filtering their immature chemistry through a spiritual worldview. The alchemists described their work in human terms. Elements were born, married, corrupted, and purified. Lack of knowledge of the detailed inner workings of the periodic table led to their lab work and their spiritual longings being intermingled. They sought the opus magnum, or the great work, or the philosopher's stone, which was as much about reaching a higher level of spiritual enlightenment as it was about transmuting lead into gold. And this reminds me of an engineer joke. So I know what you're thinking, engineer joke, oxymoron. Okay, here we go, okay. The optimist thinks the glass is half full. The pessimist thinks the glass is half empty. And the engineer thinks the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. The psychologist Carl Jung identified parallels between the laborious process used by the alchemists and the processes that he associated with psychological development. For Jung, the ultimate life goal is something called individuation. It's about becoming who you truly are, separate from your boss's expectations, your parents' hopes, or the version of yourself you project into the world. Jung realized that this kind of radical inner change is incredibly challenging, so he used the metaphor of alchemy. Just as ancient alchemists tried to turn base metals into gold, we tried to transmute our messy, raw human experiences and our conscious and unconscious minds into a centered, integrated self. To get there, Jung identified working through 5 stages: negation, confession, illumination, education, and transformation. Sound familiar? Well, while the golden rule at the surface is a very simple moral command, it might be more difficult to practice if you haven't done some of Jung's inner alchemy first. By figuring out your own wounds, motives, and needs, you are more likely to be able to treat others compassionately. You can stop guessing who the you is in the do unto other part. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a psychologist. My parents told Freud I was too young. Okay. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw from many sources. And almost every source agrees on this one thing. It is the prima materia, the base matter of coexistence. Jesus said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Rabbi Hillel, when challenged to summarize the entire Torah while standing on one foot, said, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the Torah. The rest is commentary." And Confucius taught, "Do not impose on others what you yourself do not desire." The Prophet Muhammad linked truth faith directly to this ethical imperative, saying, "None of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. And in the Hindu epic Mahabharata, one should never do that to another one which regards as injurious to one's own self. This, in brief, is the rule of righteousness. It's beautiful, right? It's give as you take. It's simple and elegant at the same time. It's almost wallpaper. It's the ethical gold standard. If everyone just did this, we'd be fine, right? Wouldn't we just all get along? When asked to tell of my personal spiritual and religious journey, I often refer to the Golden Rule, and not to the Golden Retriever, as a fundamental belief. And I've usually felt pretty confident in that story. But upon further reflection, I'm wondering if maybe I wasn't thinking broadly or deeply enough, or asking all the right questions. So let's take a look at what the Golden Rule gets right and what it misses. The Golden Rule is a huge leap from dog eat dog, or the strong dictate and the weak suffer. It requires empathy. It requires me to imagine that you have feelings just like mine. And in much of my own thinking, it has felt like enough. The ancient alchemists dedicated their lives to transmutation, the quest for transforming common lead into precious gold. For centuries, we have treated this golden rule as moral gold, the highest standard of human contact. But I can't help but thinking, if those ancient philosophers had known of the rarity and value of some even more noble metals, they might have realized that there is a standard even more precious than treating others the way we wish to be treated. Because the Golden Rule has a hidden flaw, a shadow side, as Jung might say. The flaw in the Golden Rule is right there in the double use of the word you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It presumes that you are the standard for universal human desire. It assumes that what makes you feel loved, respected, or safe is exactly what makes everyone else feel loved, respected, or safe. And it can be self-centered projection disguised as virtue. As children, we often select gifts for others that we really want. Gifting a Hot Wheel car for our dad, or Snow White doll for mom. We feel the happiness of giving to someone else, but we do so with the assurance that our gift will be shared. As young adults, the trend continues. We see the introvert on the sidelines at a party. The extrovert, seeing this poor, lonely soul sitting on the sidelines, thinks, I'm sure that all she needs is to be pulled out onto the dance floor. It's what I would want. The result? An extrovert feeling virtuous, an introvert traumatized. Do you know what kind of cheese is the most introverted? Provolone. Jonathan told me I had to do that. So these might be kind of silly examples, but when we rely solely on the Golden Rule, we aren't actually seeing the other person. We're looking at them, but seeing a mirror. We're treating